Let's talk about the surprising scientific connection between chronic stress and those just super frustrating moments of brain fog. It's a feeling a lot of us know all too well, but the actual science behind why it happens, well, that's what's truly fascinating.
Have you ever gotten to the end of a really stressful week or maybe even a whole month and just felt like you can't think straight? You walk into a room and completely forget why you're there, or you find yourself struggling to focus on a super simple task. If any of that sounds familiar, you are definitely in the right place. And here's the first thing you have to get. That mental drain, it's not just in your head. And it is absolutely not a personal failing. It is a real, measurable, physiological process that's happening inside your body and your brain. And we're about to break down exactly what that is.
Okay, so to really understand brain fog, we have to zoom out and look at the big picture first. Our investigation is going to start with this really crucial idea. Stress isn't just some fleeting emotion. It adds up. And over time, it takes a very real, cumulative toll on our bodies. Science actually has a name for this whole burden. It's called allostatic load. And as you can see, it's basically the total wear and tear that builds up from being in a constant state of high alert. Think of it like a running tab. Every single stressful event, big or small, adds a little something to that load. So if all allostatic load is the overall burden, what's the specific thing causing all the damage? Well, let's zoom in a little. We're going to go from this broad idea of wear and tear to the specific chemical culprits inside your body. Just take a look at this list for a second. Does any of this feel a little too familiar? That persistent brain fog, having trouble concentrating, feeling tired but somehow wired at night, maybe being a bit more irritable than you usually are? These are all classic signs that your body might be dealing with way too much of its main stress hormone. And the culprit behind all those symptoms is a hormone called cortisol. Now, in short bursts, cortisol is great. It's what gives you that jolt of focus and energy to deal with a threat. But when stress becomes chronic, your body is just flooded with it all the time, and that's when the real problems kick in. And this is where the story gets really wild. Research shows that having chronically high cortisol doesn't just make you feel forgetful, it has a direct, physical, and honestly damaging impact on the actual structure of your brain. Okay, so check this out. This shows you exactly what's happening. On the left, you've got the hippocampus. That's your brain's hub for learning and memory under normal conditions. See? It's creating new brain cells, a process we call neurogenesis. But now look at the right. When it's drenched in high cortisol, the hippocampus actually shrinks, and the creation of those new brain cells just gets totally disrupted. This is the direct physical reason for that forgetfulness and brain fog. So we found our physical culprit, cortisol. But what keeps its levels so high long after a stressful thing is over? Well, it turns out this is where our own minds kind of become an accomplice in the whole process. And the key idea here is something called perseverative cognition. It sounds complicated, but it's really just the technical term for rumination, worry, or what a lot of us just call overthinking. It's when your mind gets stuck on that mental hamster wheel, replaying a mistake from the past or worrying about a problem in the future over and over and over again. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. See, the initial stressor, like a bad meeting at work or an argument, is often over pretty quickly. The real damage comes from our thoughts about that stressor, which can go on for hours or even days. And every single time we replay that negative thought, our body reacts like the stress is happening all over again. And bam, it releases another shot of cortisol. Okay, so now we can start connecting all the dots. We've got the physical stress response driven by cortisol, and we have the psychological habit of rumination that keeps pouring fuel on the fire. Let's see how they lock together to create a really damaging feedback loop. So your brain has this network for daydreaming and just kind of thinking about yourself. It's called the default mode network. It's what's switched on when your mind is just wandering. But that perseverative cognition, that overthinking we just talked about, it hijacks the system. It turns what should be a creative or restful process into a source of repetitive, negative, stressful thoughts. And here it is, the whole vicious cycle laid out step by step. It starts with that repetitive, negative thinking, right? That hijacks the brain's default mode network. This constant mental stress keeps cortisol levels sky high, which then physically damages the hippocampus. That damage messes with your memory and your ability to think clearly, which, well, that can worsen your mood, leading you right back to more negative thinking. It's a perfect self-feeding storm. Okay, so after seeing a cycle like that, the big question is, are we just stuck in it? And the answer is a definite
No. So now let's shift gears and talk about the hopeful, empowering part of this story, how we can actually actively break this cycle. Right. This is probably the question on everyone's mind at this point. After hearing that stress can physically shrink a part of your brain, it's totally natural to worry, is that damage permanent? And the answer from the research is incredibly reassuring. No, the damage is not necessarily permanent. Studies have found that when cortisol levels come back down to normal, our cognitive abilities can start to recover. The brain is just remarkably resilient. So, breaking the cycle really involves a two-pronged attack. First, you tackle the physical side with lifestyle changes, things like exercise and better sleep, to directly lower your cortisol. And second, you tackle the psychological side. This can involve targeted therapies like rumination-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which literally helps retrain your brain to break that mental habit of overthinking. And here's why this matters so much. Some research has shown that these kinds of depressive thoughts can slash your working memory capacity by as much as 12%. That is a huge, measurable hit on your ability to think clearly. But the good news is, by breaking that cycle, you can actually reclaim that cognitive space. And this, to me, is just mind-blowing. Brain imaging studies are showing that interventions like rumination-focused CBT don't just change how you think. They create physical changes in your brain. They can actually reduce the excessive, tangled crosstalk between the different brain networks that get stuck in that negative loop. You are, in essence, literally rewiring your brain to be calmer and less likely to ruminate. So the crucial takeaway here is this. Your thoughts are not just thoughts. They trigger this whole cascade of physical events that can shape the very structure and function of your brain. Knowing that is incredibly empowering because it means you can take control of that loop. So the final question I want to leave you with is, what loop is your brain playing, and what's one small step you can take today to start changing it?